Hello everyone and welcome along to your Sunday night edition of the tr.ee podcast. My name is Craig Dennett and I'm your host this evening as pre-season is finally done. Feels like it's been a long pre-season this time around, maybe just desperate to get back to competitive action. But thankfully after yesterday's 2-2 draw against Middlesbrough, it is over and done with, and we're into the good stuff, the meaningful stuff. Full on from, I guess we can already were after Panathinaikos during the week, but back to Europe and domestic action from here forward. I'm joined by Kyran and Craig to talk about all the latest Rangers news. Kyran, how are you feeling?
Oh, good. Yeah. I thought, before we dive right into it, I thought yesterday's game was a good exercise and a good way to finish pre-season. I thought Middlesbrough were very good opponents. Not really a good test for us, but a good example of what we might expect in the season. So yeah, we'll dive deeper into it. But I thought it was a good game over the piece for what it was for the purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, to be honest, sitting there yesterday at the game, slightly hungover, I was like, why am I here? They're just treating this as a training exercise. That starting lineup is exactly what I expected it to be, but you're still thinking it's not really any competitive edge to this really, and we're just seeing what we already knew. But I think in the end it did turn out, given the way and the massive improvement the subs gave at the 60-minute mark. I think that did prove a lot actually to me about where the squad is just now, and Russell Martin's kind of, or how Russell Martin's got the ones that he sees as first teamers playing as such. But we'll come on to that in a little bit. But we're also joined by Craig Hughes. How you doing, Craig?
Yeah, all good. Similar to Kyran. Feeling I wasn't going to decide anything from yesterday's game, but felt a lot more positive by the end of the game and how we were looking towards the end. I think everybody's still in a little bit of high from the Panathinaikos. So yeah, just glad that the friendlies are now out the way and we can just focus on the proper games and get excited for that.
Yeah, 100%. So 2-2 yesterday. Kyran, what did you make of the game overall? The first 20-25 minutes were awful. I barely think we got into their half, never mind anything else. I was going to go into Russell Martin's comments separately, but I'll just kind of weave them in as we go. Interestingly, he said he didn't like the warm-up in his post-match press conference, and he really called that out and said he didn't like the attitude of a few of the players in there. Felt it was a bit of a hangover from players who weren't happy about playing it, not being left out, against Panathinaikos during the week. Having looked at the starting lineup, I'm not quite sure who that could be, because I wouldn't have expected many of them, if any of them, to start during the week against Panathinaikos. But what did you make of that comment, first of all, in terms of like that attitude is actually prevalent in the squad, and then secondly, about the fact that Russell Martin's calling it out straight away, even warm up for a pre-season friendly?
Yeah, it's one of the things, like you guys as well, you have played for years and been involved in teams for years. I think you can always tell how a team's going to play depending on what the attitude's like in the warm-up. Like, I'm sure loads of people listening and viewing will agree with me who's spent their days playing football or coaching football. I think that is one thing I said, like all my time playing football, you always get a feel for things in the warm-up and how people's attitudes are. I don't know who out that sort of starting 11 feels that they should have started. The only ones I can think of are maybe Jefte or Dessers. Desser's been taken off at half-time. I don't know, is that maybe something to do with it? I'm just surmising here. I don't know anything any more than anybody else. But in terms of the game as a whole, Craig, I actually remembered something you said during the Bruges game, and it was very much like that. That I think you said you felt that they would be stronger the first half because they started their strongest team and they would finish with their weaker team, whereas we done it the opposite way about. It was pretty much the same yesterday. I did expect us to come into the second half, and that's the way it played out. I'm just gutted I didn't put 2 each on for both games. But as a whole, I said at the top of the show there, I liked the way Middlesbrough came and they pressed us aggressively. They made it a competitive game. I don't think they wanted to let their travelling support down, so they had that wee bit about them, behind them. And yeah, I thought it was a useful exercise for a lot of the players. I know we'll come on to some names, but there is a few players that have played themselves down the pecking order because there is competition for places, especially in the middle of that park. And there's probably a couple of players that have found himself up in the pecking order. So end of pre-season, it's been a worthwhile sort of 5 weeks they've been back, I think. And I'm quite looking forward to the real stuff, or well, the proper real stuff starting. I know we're one game into the season already.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summation of it all. Craig, Andrew Gill here saying, loved the comment about the warm-up. Are you happy to see the manager calling that out so publicly? I guess so much in football tends to be done behind closed doors, and there's an external facing narrative, and then there's the internal reality of what's going on at a football club. But are you happy to see that being called out as it is at this stage?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, it's not as if he threw any particular players under the bus. It's not as if he made the squad out to be, unprofessional and like that. Because these guys are human at the end of the day. There is going to be guys that were disappointed. We've all been there in football where at this point it's hard to get yourself up for the next game. It's a smaller game, so I do get it. I'm fine with him calling it out. He's saying it was standard. He's saying, look, if you want to get in my team, going out, a petted lip and not having the right attitude is not the way to do it. So I don't mind it. He's not directly threw MD under the bus. He's just kind of sending a reminder of this is what I expect from any of my teams anyway that comes to play for me. It's going to need it, show right from the warm up, every game, every position we ask them to play in. So no, I don't mind it.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and I do think there are some players that kind of potentially played themselves out of contention as such. Maybe not out of contention, that's a bit harsh for a pre-season friendly against Middlesbrough, but just started to show that they're maybe going to be a wee bit further down the pecking order than we first thought. We'll go on to that in a little bit. There's a few kind of players I want to pick out and see, are they going to be on the fringes? Are they going to play a wee bit more than we think they or initially thought they would? Players like Lyle Cameron, Connor Barron, Manny Fernandez, and then some of the younger guys as well we'll get talking about. But Kyran, I thought it was interesting as well that that Russell Martin's acknowledging up front that there's still areas that we need to strengthen, and actually some of the performances we're seeing in these games are showing where we need to strengthen. So he's not trying to sugarcoat it. He's not trying to pretend everything's okay. He's very much still out there saying, no, this is we're going to need to strengthen, and the areas will be obvious to everyone as they during the games. I think the areas are obvious to me anyway, in terms of the wide areas in the front line, in particular. Are you happy that that's still the case? And I mean, I got the match programme yesterday and I took a picture of the size of the squad, because it was Middlesbrough squad looked about half the size of ours, and it was 37 players in total, and it's so bloated. At this moment in time, you could probably cut 15, 16, 17 players out of there and not impact the match day, the quality of the match day squad at all. Is that a concern for you at this stage? I know we'll go and talk about Robin Proper's out the door. Ridvan Yilmaz is reportedly pretty close to being out the door as well. But is the size of the squad a concern for you when we're still seeing that we need so many more reinforcements?
Of course, it's a concern. Quite difficult as well. You've got guys around about the training ground who know that they don't have a future at the club, and they're having to train not so much on their own, but separately from the first team. Now, you've got to think there's going to be a meeting in the middle somewhere there where it gets closer to the deadline day, and agents are trying to find these guys clubs and saying maybe it's best that we move our candidate on because he's not going to play here. So you might see more movement as the window draws closer, but can we see that happening for 15, 16, 17 of these players? I don't think so. When guys are on the wages like Rabbi Matondo, Ben Davis, Ridvan Yilmaz, we've seen how hard it was to even move on Robin Proper because the difference in wage to where he was going. I don't think for 1 second 3 guys like that don't really have any value at the moment are going to get a bigger wage than what they're on. And I think this sort of echoes back to the mess that Ross Wilson left our club in and the ridiculous transfers that he was making. But in terms of the signings and people coming in, we'll move on to we'll come on to it further. The links to Oliver Antman, the Rangers Dan side me is trying his best not to make a joke about that name. The forward line, the strike force, I know Ackerman missed out yesterday for, I think, what we heard was an injury. I don't know if that's an excuse or he has actually picked up a knock.
Yeah, we're always a bit sceptical during the transfer window when there's someone that's been linked with clubs elsewhere and they're suddenly got a little knock or an injury and they might or might not be back for the next game. You always get a bit sceptical, don't you?
Yeah. If you were to ask me, like, would you be happy going into the season with Iggerman as your 9? Like, I'd bite your hand off it for just now. I know that it feels like he'll probably move on. I hope we don't leave that too late in the window because we do need reinforcements up there. I mean, Danilo, what's it, 4 or 5 goals in pre-season, 3 assists. He's had a great pre-season, but it was non-existent at Panathinaikos game through the week, maybe a game that didn't suit him. I still think he'll play a part as a backup striker, and I still stand by Dessers won't do. It really won't do. We need to be moving him on. I think I counted 5 or 6 such touches in the entirety of the first half yesterday. Nothing within the first half hour. I've never been a fan. I won't be a fan. His numbers sort of back up any value that we might have of him at the moment. So it's probably best that we move him on.
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
Replace. And I don't think we'll replace without moving one of these guys on. I don't see us bringing in a 4th striker.
No, I definitely think there needs to be movement out the way in the on that striker role before there's any incomings, and I think that's where some frustration seems to be coming, Craig. I think obviously there was earlier in the window there were quite a lot of links going around. Dort Turgeman was the strongest one that was there, and then it all goes quiet because we clearly are waiting for someone to move out the door. We can't go making the squad even more bloated than it already is there, in the hope that people leave, and then all of a sudden you're left with them all when it comes to the end of the transfer window. But how important is that turnover in that sort of number 9 position, I guess, as Kyran said there, and that we get the fresh faces, the fresh blood in there as soon as we can. Obviously the domestic season kicks off next Saturday again away to Motherwell, which isn't always the easiest game in the world either.
Yeah, it's massive, and as you said, looking at that squad size, far too big, and we do need changes in there. We do need to see quite a few bodies out before we get guys in. If you end up getting guys in, then it gives all the power to the guys that are there in the buying clubs where they know we're desperate to get rid of them, and they know they need to cut a deal before the end of August. So it is a hard one, hard to strike a balance. I've said before, my worry is with the strikers that it rolls on too long and we miss out on good targets. So I think it is important we get a resolution on Iggerman as he going. Dessers, I think it's quite clear he is keen on a move. We're keen to get him off the books. He happens if they're still the one that's in for him. But I think a move will get done at some point on him as well. But I think it's just important we get it done pretty soon, just to give us time to get the right targets in and not be scrambling about or not miss out on the guys that we had lined up because it's taken us too long. But I do feel for us in terms of the guys making decisions. They came in quite late. It's been a pretty much rush to get guys in, get guys out. So they've still got time. I know we're getting impatient because our season's starting, but we've just got to see it out because it's going to be probably to the end of the window and even beyond. As I said last time I was on, I don't think we'll get everything resolved at the end of this window, but an important thing would be the strikers. You need a new focal point. You need, as Kyran touched on, Danilo has been good in pre-season. I don't think he'll be the answer every week. I don't think he can play in certain games. I don't think we can rely on him. We need a different option up front. So yeah, a resolution and getting our targets in, hopefully can be done next couple of weeks.
Kyran, Rangers on tour makes an interesting point here.
Exactly what I was butting into.
Just around the timing. Around the timing side of things. Obviously, the Panathinaikos tie as such is really important for a number of reasons. Firstly, progressing towards that the potential Champions League group stage. Secondly, guaranteeing group stage European football before up to Christmas or just after Christmas as it is now. And then there's the added piece around the additional money you get as well from playing in these ties, and potentially if you get to the playoff round you get that extra £5 million on top of anything else. So there's obviously a lot of moving parts for the club financially, I think, that come into this, and the potential opportunities as well. Rangers on Tour says we won't move on Dessers or Igaman until after Wednesday night. How hard is it to get that timing right? Because actually, you get through this round, the week after you're straight into the next round, so you've only got such a short space of time to do anything like that. So how hard is it in getting the timing right? And actually, there's not a good time or a right time when you're in the kind of stage of the competition and you're on that sort of hamster wheel of the qualifiers.
Yeah, there's no way we move both of them on before a qualifier, if you know what I mean. This might be something that's staggered, but the timing is everything here. The fact we've kind of left it this late into the qualifiers, I don't know if that's been done on purpose, and I don't know if that's the same with Nico Raskin, if there's something lined up for him, and we've kind of said, look, let him help us get through these qualifiers and then we'll come back and we'll talk business. I'm not so sure, but the timing for the striker situation is key. One thing's for sure, Danilo won't be moving on, so there's going to be a reliance on him. In terms of who goes first out of Dessers or Igaman, or if any of them goes, I'm not so sure, but I didn't realise it was so soon, Craig, that it would be the week after. Now, don't get me wrong, and I hope this doesn't come back to bite me again. If we get through this, I think we've won a bit of a watch that the next tie is probably weaker than the game against Panathinaikos, so there's a chance we might get away with it. But again, I hope that doesn't come back to bite me. It's going to be one for them to discuss in the background. I know that Russell Martin sounded very positive when he spoke about, I think I'm paraphrasing here, saying that he hopes to get a few more in, and he's yet to speak to Kevin Thewell about what they're planning on doing. So the timing for this one is going to be everything. I know the name Dorturgeman just doesn't seem to be going away. One I'd really like to see coming in, but again, I'd be delighted if Igaman stays. Not so much Dessers.
I think that's fair. Just on the sort of incomes, I think that was actually related to the outgoings. They said that he hadn't spoken to Kevin Thewell and the team just around when players are likely to go, etc. He just says he waits on an update from them, basically on progress on discussions, etc. But I imagine in terms of the incomings, he's talking to them every single day, trying to batter down the door to get more.
What I found interesting, Craig, was when he done the interview, was it for Sky Sports on Friday, and he was asked about the interest in Raksaki. Very open about it.
Very open about it. That was a bit strange, although normally you're used to a manager not being that open unless they're really sure that something's going to get over the line. But he was that open about Kwame Poku as well earlier in the window, and he didn't arrive, so that kind of made me kind of second guess that one a bit. But Craig, it's interesting that he was so open about that, and not even to a Scottish broadcaster, it was to a UK-wide broadcaster, which I think makes a difference as well.
Yeah, it was surprising because he's shot down a lot of other questions on certain players before. So I was quite surprised at that one, which did kind of make me think that he does think there's a real chance. I mean, judging by the kind of rumours that are coming about, today, we're obviously still looking at other options in there as well. But yeah, the fact he was so open did quite surprise me, did make me think. But again, it's maybe part of the technique. You start talking about one and you push for another while people are, thinking you're going in one direction. So I don't know. I don't know if that one will come to fruition. But yeah, it was quite strange compared to the rest of these kind of techniques of being shut down anything and not really talk about players. And we, like say the Rothwell signing, didn't hear a thing about it, and he just signs. So it was an interesting technique. He was asked about it and quite open. So I think that one could be one to watch.
Yeah, before we move on, I'd realised we've kind of gone round the houses a wee bit on this one, on the game yesterday, but it's the last point on that one, Kyran. Interesting that we were all confused when Russell Martin came up and sat beside us on the gantry for the second half, but we found out afterwards that he'd actually been sent off for his protests to John Beaton about the Stonewall, the most Stonewall penalty that I think that there is in any game of football that should have been given yesterday, albeit it's a friendly. But interesting that he got so wound up, and he described himself as a passionate guy, and he probably overstepped the mark a little bit. But interesting that even in a friendly, he's keen to point that out as much as possible, to highlight it, to go at it so passionately about a decision that's been wrong towards Rangers. A lot of people were saying welcome to Scotland. JB's just said that actually in the comments, saying awful refereeing. But it's a different approach to other managers have taken, I think, isn't it? In terms of previously when they kind of played it down a little bit, or just towed the line and not said the right thing, but he's straight in there and calling it out.
Yeah, and quite right. And he's only called out one decision from 3. That Middlesbrough goal that was chopped off should never have been chopped off. And then the second goal they scored, you'll never see someone more offside in all your life than the boy that's put it in the net, their captain. 3 horrible decisions. His view for the penalty is a perfect angle in which to see that. Like, it's not like the boy's arms were behind his sides. Like, they're well above his head, and it's come off it like he's trying to slam dunk it into the Copeland. But in terms of calling it out, we've seen managers try this before, and it just comes back to haunt us. It's refreshing to hear that he won't stand for it, but you know what the SFA are like. I'm not a conspiracist and all the rest of it. We see the treatment that John Brown got when he called out the Andrew Dallas stuff at Easter Road last year. What I will say was Russell Martin sounded like he was a bit shocked when somebody asked him, do you expect to receive a ban for that? I think he might. I think he might.
It very much depends on if John Beaton reports it or not. I think it's the old amateur football one of, is the referee going to report the yellow cards or is he not during the pre-season friendlies? It's very much down to his discretion. So it was one of the first things that people were asking afterwards in the media room when we were waiting on the managers coming in was, is that a ban that carries over? Is that something that's going to impact Russell Martin's ability to be in the dugout against Motherwell next weekend? Apparently it does, if it's reported. Apparently there is it does carry over, so it's very much down to that. Russell Martin did say that he'd apologised to John Beaton, and John Beaton had actually apologised to him for getting the decision wrong. So you'd imagine if that's the case, and it's kind of just been like tempers are frayed a wee bit, and then they've just went, right, we both made mistakes. Sorry, like let's just move on. That he won't do it, but there's every chance, and I don't know if it's purely down to the referee's discretion or John Beaton's going to be obligated to report it. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if even the fact that it happened in the tunnel rather than on the pitch makes it less obvious, and then it's like it's only by chance that the media have found out rather than anything else.
We're top of the league for John Beaton apologies already.
I mean, you wonder if maybe it doesn't go down as a red card if he said he maybe just sent him to the stand. If if it happened in the tunnel, there's maybe no report of actually been shown a red card, if you know what I mean. So I'm the same as you. I don't know how it works. At first I thought, yeah, there'll definitely be a ban, but maybe if he's not been officially shown a red card, then it might get away with it. But no, as you guys touched on it, I was trying to give him a bit of leeway. Referees are in their pre-season as well. They're getting up to speed, but there's only so much you can account for. Those decisions were so bad, and even some of the ones that didn't lead to goals are in. I thought towards the end he was kind to us, for a change on a few decisions. Not necessarily he was being kind to us. I think it was just so bad. So yeah, you can excuse them being a friendly. They're getting up to speed, but some of those decisions yesterday were absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, I think the only saving grace they've maybe got is that they didn't have VAR, and VAR would have corrected all 3 of them. I think
you would hope it would have corrected them.
Yeah, we would have hoped. In any normal world, it would have happened.
Tommy's Cardigan has wrote in the comments, "I've never known a manager to be sent off in a friendly." How could you forget the famous meme of Phil Clement behind the fence, man?
I forgot about that one. Yeah, that's erased that from my memory at this moment in time. Kyran, we spoke about the size of the squad. Robin Propper was announced officially yesterday morning that he is gone to FC20. I believe the fee is around £1.4 million. If going by FOTMOB anyway. So I think that seems to me that we've recouped the vast majority of our money, albeit some will have gone out on that gap in wages as such that he's going to have as well. Is it's just one that I think he seems like a nice enough guy. He seems like a decent enough footballer. It just didn't work out for him. We just didn't have the physicality to make it work here, did he?
No, he didn't. And this is probably sort of touching back on Russell Martin's press conference yesterday. This is something I loved, was how he spoke up Robin Proper as a person and as a professional, and what he's like around the club, and that he hopes he gets to say goodbye to the fans and the staff around here. I think that says a lot about Russell Martin. People talk about Russell Martin, and I know firsthand from someone that knows him that how good a man manager he is, and on that personable side, how good he can be with the players. Now, it would have been easy for Russell Martin to say, yeah, he wasn't good enough for here, he's not done the business, watched him from afar, so on, the way that we see him. But in terms of, he must have been a popular guy behind the scenes. Didn't work out for him here. Probably a bit of a botch signing in terms of what you need to have to play in Scotland, that physicality side of things. He's well loved back in 20. We know that for sure with the reports that came over when we signed him. There was a lot of well wishes from their fans. And by all accounts, from what I hear, he's been given a 4-year deal over there. So at his stage of his career, like, fair play to him. Like, fair enough. We wish him all the best. Hope he does well back in Holland. And yeah, it didn't quite work out for him, but I hope we can reinvest that money in a sort of younger, more physical centre-back, or perhaps someone with a wee bit more experience from Leicester that's 6'3" and he's got 11 England caps under his belt.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see if that one comes over the line. We spoke earlier on about the fact that players need to leave before they're going to come in. The one glaring gap for me, there's plenty of glaring gaps actually, there's not just one, but Craig, we don't seem to have a left-sided centre half that fits at all in that, and at the moment everyone seems to be right-footed, and the balance doesn't seem quite right when we're playing at the moment. I think Giga, I'm not entirely sure where we landed yet in pronunciation, but I think he seems to be playing as the left-sided centre half, but then John Souttar did so against Panathinaikos at the during last week. That seems like an obvious gap that we need to fill, and hopefully Robin Proper's departure will mean that we can get on with actually filling that.
Yeah, and I think it stands out even more because, like the Panathinaikos game, we've had 4 right-footers as a full defence. So if you've got a natural left-back in there, probably you can get away with centre-back. I think players should be comfortable enough on either side that centre-back, you can get away. You might not look quite as comfortable, but you can get away with playing either side. But I think it stands out even more because, we are, as I said, we've not got a natural left back either. So yeah, centre back's one. I think we definitely need someone in. Definitely Proper had to go because you've already got him, Ben Davies on the books as well. So they have to go. NCL as well, still on the books. I think he'll obviously move on as well. But yeah, I think it's a big part. I think we probably need, 4. I would say we need to bring in a kind of nailed on starter, but a guy who's going to be a bit of a leader back there as well, to be to be in there and Souttar competing for a jersey. But yeah, left side of centre back and left back, I'd say are kind of key priorities. Because I thought the defence first half looked absolutely all over the camp yesterday, and to be fair to the guys, a couple of young, like Hutton thrown in there, Fernandez first kind of start at Ibrox, but the defence, yeah, I think we do need a big presence at centre back on that left side.
Sorry to butt in again, Craig. Do you guys find it unusual that the only left back that we've been linked with is Owen Beck, and he's now away to Derby? There's been no other rumours at all about a left back coming in. Yeah,
I think it's interesting. Like Luke Gibson 97 here says we don't have a left-sided left side, which I think is very fair. Jeff Day did not look at up to the races at all yesterday. He struggled. He struggled a lot, which surprised me a little bit because I thought actually the way that Russell Martin wants to play, that sort of the fullbacks inverting inside works for him, because he likes to move away from anywhere but left back. He likes to play really, doesn't he, when he's playing left back? So he's just one of these players that does like to move around the pitch, but he seemed to be lacking confidence. He was kind of tripping over the ball and taking bad touches and giving the ball away at the halfway line. He just didn't look confident in any way at all. Not that I think he's the answer, because the lack of assists and goals from him last season, combined with some poor defensive work as well. You're kind of looking at him going, okay, he's a young guy. Hopefully he's going to progress, but he's not really shown much sign of that, to be honest. And then the other one that's coming up is Ridvan Yilmaz, who seems to be on his way out the door to Besiktas. Eventually, one day that rumour will finally come true. Not sure if it'll be a loan or a permanent transfer, to be honest. I think that'll be interesting to see. I don't think there's any way we're getting our £6 million back for him. So it's really how much can you get back? But I'd agree, Kieran. I think in terms of the left side, Max Aarons will be there, and he's clearly going to be the starter at left back, which I'm not a huge fan of either, to be honest. But it seems to be the balance because he wants to play James Tavernier. I don't think James Tavernier's done anything wrong during pre-season. He's actually looked like one of our better players, but you always know there's that moment coming, or there's that game that's he's just going to get caught out, and you know that's coming, and that's what we need to get away from. Craig, what's your thoughts on that left-sided piece?
Yeah, I think that's quite clear. He doesn't fancy the left backs that are there, which Yefte, I think he struggled majorly last season. I think there was signs that there's a player in there, but I just think he kept making the same mistakes over and over again and never seemed to really learn. He still does that thing where he just sprints into a tackle and totally misjudges it and gets the ball knocked by him. He does that so often and takes himself out of the game. And now I think you're asking your fullbacks to do something, probably more complicated than most fullbacks are asked to do. So if you struggle with kind of basic role of fullback, ask him to do extra. But, it's quite clear Russell Martin doesn't see him as the guy that is going to take that jersey. And he didn't do himself any favours yesterday either. We desperately need somebody in. I think he would have given Robbie Fraser more minutes if he saw him as being, having real potential just now to play a part this season. So, and obviously Yilmaz is out the door. So I think that there's we badly need a left back. And even if you're saying Max Aarons can play there, and Tav's going to start, what happens when injuries, mount up? When one of them, looks Tav can't play every single game. And you can't have a left back playing, you can't have a right back playing left back every single game. You don't have Sterling. You've now got Yefte with no confidence. Regardless, we need a left back in there. So it's one I'd expect us to move on. I think he's probably come in, had a look at likes of Yefte, Ridvan, and those guys and decided, no, I'm playing Aarons there for now, and he'll bring somebody in. But I expect us to resolve that. But I'm with Kyran. It's quite strange that we've not been linked to anybody apart from one Beck. So we'll see. So it doesn't feel as if he's acting like it's a major priority, but I really hope and I think we will see somebody come in there.
Yeah, I don't think it is a priority position at the moment. I think we're all looking at that forward line in the wingers. It's been the place where we really need to strengthen quickly. But Kieran, Rangers on Tour, saying Jeffy is a player that should have been a project player, but was heavily relied upon last season. Needs more experience around him for us to see him grow as a player. Do you think that is true? Do you think that's accurate in terms of, I guess Robin Propper could be viewed as an experienced player? He's there, 31 years old, but he's a player that's adapting to a new league and a new style of play and all of that side of sort of stuff. So do you think it is just a case of we need to ease Jeff D in a bit more, or do you think actually, do you feel like you've seen enough and he's not going to be the player that we'd hoped him to be? Even saying that, I felt really harsh. So I can barely get that out. But do you think it's potentially people have made up their mind on Jeff D already, and his ability to change and adapt and build as a player he's not really going to get that chance at Rangers?
Yeah, I think there's two sides of it. I think he is a good player. I think there's attributes there that he could be an even better player. He's very young. He's on quite a long contract here as well. He's not cost us too much money. If the situation was different and we were a strong team that sort of had backup options there and the next guy up to come in, I think, I don't know, maybe we'd be looking at a loan to go and gain some experience elsewhere and more first team minutes, because he's not going to get anywhere near the minutes this season that he did last season. Now, the second side to it is the fact that he probably doesn't suit Russell Martin's style. the Bruges game that we took in, and you seen him inverting, and this was the first time we started to see these sort of patterns where he went right into sort of centre mid, and at one point he was over in the right wing. He just did not look comfortable whatsoever. And again, this is probably something that he's not used to whatsoever. You listen to Tavernier in the press conference before the Panathinaikos game saying you're going to see a style of play here that you've not seen at Ibrox before, and it's a style of play that he hadn't ever played in. So if an experienced player is having to adapt to that, think of how difficult it is for someone at the age of, I think he's 22, 23. So he's still very much, still very much a pup. I don't know. I can't see him holding down that spot this year, but I've been wrong plenty of times. He's not done anything to sort of push himself to holding down that spot, or even starting, or even coming close to starting on Wednesday. That's going to be Max Aaron's spot, but it's imperative that we bring in a left back and Jefty remains the backup. And for me, Aarons has to go in as our right backs. I thought he done well the other night. I know people disagree with that, but I did. I think he was neat and tidy when he came into the game in a position that isn't his own. So, yeah, Jefty backup for me this year. Not a bad backup, let's put it that way, but not the best.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's talk about some of the fringe players before we start talking about readiness for next season. Let's talk about some of the fringe players, maybe a bit harsh for a couple of them, but let's call them players that are kind of on the edges of the first team and will contribute during the season, but are really unlikely to start every week. So on my list here, and you guys can add in any more, I've got Lyle Cameron, Connor Barron, Oscar Cortez, Kieran Dowell, who will hopefully be making an exit, but it's seeming less and less likely every game that goes by that he plays. And Manny Fernandez in there as well, and then we'll come on separately to younger players: Finlay Curtis, Josh Gentles, Bailey Rice. But just on the fringe players, first of all, Craig, I thought Lyle Cameron played particularly well yesterday, and actually really impressed me with how he was playing on the half turn, and he was driving with the ball forward, and it was night and day from what we were seeing from the likes of Connor Barron and Bailey Rice in there in the first half. Do you think Lyle Cameron probably has a bigger role to play than we necessarily think at this stage during the season?
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought he was bright when he came on. I think he can make some sort of impact. Well, I know he'll be good enough to be a key player again. I don't see him being quite at that level, but no, I think he done himself no harm yesterday. He looks as if somebody can contribute, certainly domestically. I think it's been hard for him as well pre-season. He's came in knowing fine well that he was probably signed by the old regime and that he might not fit into the plans. He's also picked up an injury right before pre-season, so it's been hard for him. So I think he couldn't ask for much more coming into that game. Made a bit of an impact and gave the manager something to think about. Again, I don't see him playing a big role in the next few weeks, but he's kept himself in the manager's thoughts, and he could be a type of guy that you bring on or you play him in some domestic games this season.
Yeah, Kieran, plenty of comments coming in on Lyle Cameron. Thomas Cardigan said, I thought Lyle Cameron looked like a really good, tidy player. Robert Fisher says, Lyle Cameron did himself a great boost up the pecking order, direct and forward-looking full second half. Bluebells are blue. Cameron looked good for me. I'm struggling to see how he gets game time, though, with Till Asgard being a likely first pick. There's a few more in here. Sorry, just scrolling through. Martin says Cameron was excellent in my opinion. Luke Gibson 97, really impressed with Cameron's pressing and work rate. He looked eager to impress. No FNC says Cameron is a player. Were you impressed by him as well yesterday? And actually, how do you see his role during this coming season?
Yeah, I really like him. Really liked what I seen yesterday when he signed, or sort of when the season ended. I went back and watched a lot of stuff that, like the games he was involved in with Dundee. I don't like to watch the highlight packages that people put together of the player. I more like to watch the highlights of the actual games that they featured in to try and get a better idea of what they're like during games. And I was nothing but impressed with Lyle Cameron. Now, wee bit the opposite of what I said about Jefty, that his style maybe doesn't suit what Russell Martin wants from the team. I think for Lyle Cameron, it really plays into his hands how Russell Martin likes that sort of number 8 that gets forward and supports the striker. They've got a goal in them. And Lyle Cameron's got a wand of a right foot. Scored a lot of goals from range last season, cutting in off the left and sort of driving areas in the later third of the pitch. So I really like the look of him. I think we'll probably see him more domestically than we will in Europe, though. I think that's where you'll see him. Might take him a wee while to get into the team, and like you said, Craig, I felt Shug, I feel a wee bit sorry for him the way he's come in, and you've got to remember he probably wasn't one that Russell Martin was watching last year, in terms of he was watching us towards the tail end of last season, knowing that the Rangers job might come up. He also came back with a niggling calf strain that he trained on his own for the first week of pre-season as well, but it just, everything you hear from him, sounds like he's got a really good head on his shoulders. It looks a tidy player, and that aggressive press that we've seen a few times yesterday to win the ball back. If I'm right in saying he started the move for Danilo's header as well, winning with a strong turn within our own half. That's the type of player I think he's going to grow on, Russell Martin, and I hope he does, because everybody, well, I'm reading in the comments and on social media, really likes him and they're rooting for him. Someone else has mentioned Bajrami there. We also mentioned Kieran Dow. There's two guys that have probably put themselves slightly down in the pecking order, and Cameron's moved up one, because it's such a stacked area of the pitch for us. Those three in the middle, like who would have thought last year, when we basically had three players to pick from, that we would be in this situation? So I only hope he does really well. And yeah, delighted to see him out there yesterday.
Yeah, Kieran, sticking with you, one on the flip side of it, I guess, was Connor Barron, who I thought really struggled yesterday, and he was trying to play safe, and I think he was trying to play his way into the style and make sure he was doing the right things. But I thought he really struggled yesterday. He was caught in the ball constantly. Ricky Lynch says Cameron is stolen Barron's spot. What did you make of Connor Barron and where he fits? It does feel like he's fallen quite far down the pecking order.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that Cameron stole his spot. I think yesterday Barron was more playing the 6, if I'm right, with Bailey Rice further forward, which was unusual. But we've seen last year that Barron can play a part in certain games where we're needing 2 6s, and you go away from home in Europe where you need that sort of dogged midfield to break up play and cover a lot of ground. Like there is a place in the Rangers team for Connor Barron, but in terms of progression and development and what we thought we were getting compared to where he's at with his development just now, he's just not quite there yet to be a starter for us. But it could again be a good squad player. I can't see him being one that goes out on loan. He seems to sort of have a good attitude about him. What I found unusual about yesterday was he was hitting a lot of the set pieces. He's never one that I would have down as sort of being a set piece taker or having like a good delivery. But then again, I've seen Ben Davies hit outswinging corners away in Euro ties. So what do I know? But Barron for me, yeah, maybe not one of his better games yesterday, but probably his first in that role in, what was it, a 3-5-2 we started with. So again, quite unusual. A lot of the guys there that were pushing for a place in the team, that were sort of thrust into that formation with that starting lineup, some of them I felt a wee bit sorry for, because you're a wee bit on a hide into nothing there, aren't you?
Yeah, well, one of those that did get called out in a positive way from Russell Martin was Oscar Cortez. Mm-hmm. Craig, he started at right wing back, which was a kind of a new one for us. Never mind, probably for him as well. AJ says Cortez did what he could. More to come from him. He's obviously a player that we've had quite a significant outlay on. I heard that we could have cancelled that for a £2 million fee if we wanted to, but we chose to push ahead with the purchase at £4.4 million, I think it was in total. I think there's a lot of promise to come from him. He's missed so much game time for us through injury, and he doesn't seem quite up to speed yet in terms of where he needs to be. I think he took 6 or 7 games when he first arrived to get up to speed, so hopefully he's just on the same journey to get in there as well. Craig, what do you make of Oscar Cortez and where his role in the squad will be this season?
Yeah, I think he's one a lot of us kind of didn't forget about, but we kind of written off because he had so many injuries last year. Hardly kicked a ball last season. I thought yesterday again, as Kieran said, felt a little bit sorry for him. He was put out of position, but I think Russell Martin made a point at making that comment because Oscar Cortez didn't go out with a bad attitude. He, done what he could in that area. Now, do I want to see him anywhere near the right back area? Absolutely not, because he's not a defender in any way. But he showed a couple of flashes. I thought, there was one move in particular that just the end product was missing. But I think there is something in there, and we're obviously not going to try and get rid of him or anything like that. So he can contribute. It just might be a little bit, as you said, as a slow burner where he comes off the bench a little bit, or he builds up. He builds up his fitness and then comes in and makes an impact later down the line. But yeah, I thought he done all right yesterday, considering. But I think mainly his application was pretty decent. So I think there is a star player in there. Again, it wasn't his fault that we went ahead and made that deal and paid that money. He didn't mean to get in here. He wasn't phoning it in. It's not his fault. He's had this sort of start to his Rangers career, but hopefully he can kind of turn it around and contribute. And it's an area we obviously really need reinforcements in. So I'm hopeful over the next few weeks he can play some sort of part and sort of stake his claim that over the season he could be a decent option for us.
Yeah, Kieran, I'm just going to speed through this bit because keen to get to the latest transfer links with Oliver Antman and then look at the season ahead and a sort of readiness scale for that one. But the young players, Finlay Curtis has obviously been the standout in this pre-season. His goal last midweek against Panathinaikos showed the talent that he does have. Finlay Curtis, Josh Gentles, and Bailey Rice kind of rolling out Alexander Hutton at the moment because I just don't feel like he's ready, anywhere near ready to be able to play at that level for us or consistently for us at the moment. But it's interesting he's getting more game time as well. But Curtis, Gentles, and Rice, what do you make of those three? And I assume they will play an important part during the season, which is good to see from young players.
Yeah, well, I would say quickly on Rice, I'd like to see him get a loan. Going out to another Premiership team, I'd like to see it at a decent enough level that he can go and prove himself and be a bit of a standout and progress, because I feel like this is very critical in terms of his career. What happens next? I think he needs to be playing football. The way our midfield is just now, he doesn't get into it. He doesn't even get near it. But we do know there's talent there, so we need to be careful with that one. Gentles, I'd probably say he's only 17, still a young lad, probably still plays at the youth level or his year in the Rangers youth. Want to keep an eye on. But Finlay Curtis, absolutely love the boy. I've loved everything I've seen from him. I like the attitude. Feel like even when he came on as a substitute yesterday, he looked like he had a bit more about him, as if, right, okay, I belong at this level. That's three goals in 3 games at Ibrox he's had, and he doesn't look one bit out of place. When we talk about the possessions which we need to prioritise and what still needs to be done in terms of being ready for the new season, he's probably one that they've now said, right, maybe we need one less there. This guy can be back up to Gassama and we can be quite comfortable with it, because we speak about for so long that we can't produce youth. The English Premier League pinch all the good youth players that we've got. We've got an 18-year-old on our hands here who can develop into a very good player. Now, I'm not getting ahead of myself with it. He's still got a long way to go, but he's got the attitude. And when you talk about players that come up here, and very good players have come here, and the jersey's been far too heavy. It's not the case with Finlay Curtis, and he showed that. He's not here to sit about, and I know the cliche goes about if he speaks well. When you listen to him, he does speak like a young guy that's got a very good attitude, but he's humble about it and he's hungry. And I think it's something as well. Russell Martin spoke very well about him. I want to see more of Finlay Curtis, and he starts for me on Wednesday, no doubt about it. I really like him.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's the one that will feature the most this season, going by how it is, and I probably am on board with you in terms of Bailey Rice. You want to see him at a team like Falkirk or Motherwell or somewhere like that, where he can play a bit more, and he can get that level of experience that you see young guys like Lennon Miller, for example, getting in, and you see the benefit that he's had there. I think him and Bailey Rice actually were coming through at the same time, and it shows the value of game time, doesn't it, in terms of what that can do for your career and if you can grasp it with both hands. Craig, we spoke about wingers and how that's the focus. Kieran's mentioned Oliver Antman, which is the latest link today. It's hard to take that name seriously, isn't it? But it's
it sounds like somebody that would appear in the comment.
We spoke on the podcast on Thursday, Kyran and Ian, about Raksaki and the potential for that one. But Oliver Antman's currently plays with Go Ahead Eagles in Holland, 6 goals and 15 assists last year. There seems to be quite conflicting reports this morning. I think there's a lot of suggestions that actually Sheffield United are leading the race for him and he's close to signing for them. But it's obviously come out tonight through Stephen McGowan at the Herald, who's a really reliable source within Scottish football, and it's come out today that Rangers are readying a bid for him. Seems to be a really direct winger, which fits what we've seen from the type of player Russell Martin wants to bring. A lot of his assists were actually cutbacks into the box from the byline, which seems to be which is promising as well. We've seen Gassama over the last couple of games just goes past the fullbacks if they're not there and cut the ball, try and cut the ball back. So it's interesting that's coming through as well. How important is it that we get a winger that is as effective as Gassama looks as the way he will be, and we've got danger on both sides of the pitch, and we're not just relying on one side of the pitch to create the chances.
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on it a couple of weeks ago. That's been a problem at Rangers for a number of years. We've had one winger firing and then it's been so lopsided. So I think it is important that we've got threats coming from both sides. I think every winger we're looking at, it's brilliant to actually see that we're following some sort of plan and there's some sort of we're identifying the attributes to seeing a player that needs to fit in the system. He's physically strong enough as well. I think he's 6'1", 6'2" maybe. So physically, you think he can handle it as well. But I noticed the difference in the second half yesterday. We're playing Russell Martin's way. We were getting in behind a lot more, and Gassama looks to do that as well. Get in behind and cause problems. So this Antman looks to do the similar things. Getting in behind, as you said, cutbacks. It causes fullbacks nightmares. First half we played everything in front of, Middlesbrough, and that's what teams in the Scottish League absolutely love, when they can just pack defences and play that way. When we can quickly get in behind with power and strength and pace with wingers, then we'll get a lot of joy. You've seen, dare say, you've seen Celtic under Ange. That's all they've done really. They got in behind, the wingers cut back goal. That's similar to what we do a lot domestically, you think. So it's exciting. I think the wingers we linked to, they all make you think that's sort of buying into what we need. Because right now, as Kieran said, Finlay Curtis is doing well. Gassama done well. If you're looking at the other side, then it's Dow doesn't do that. So we need that other option. So no, he's a one I'm quite excited about.
Yeah, I think Kieran Dowell's time at Rangers was probably summed up by in the last couple of minutes where he nutmegged the boy and then booted it out the park on the other side, about 40 yards from goal. He was trying to cross into the box. I think that kind of summed up Kieran Dowell and his time at Rangers.
That's more Kieran Wallace and Kieran Dowell.
Kieran,
see on Antman, how much are you looking forward to Tom Com screaming his name after scoring on a European night?
Oh, it'd be brilliant. He's only butchered half the squad so far. So,
Kieran Airwolf's caught with a couple of comments actually. He said need 2 wide men who can contribute at scale, and then followed up with wingers need double figures, assists and goals. That does seem to be what Russell Martin expects from his wide players, and it's something we've lacked for quite a long time now. But how encouraging is it and how exciting is it to see that's what we're going after, and we've got clear profiles of players that fit that mould that we're being linked with.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about like double figures, assists and goals, on the Antman stuff, 36 games, 6 goals and 16 assists last season with an average rating of 7.3 on FootMob. That's really, really impressive stuff, and you can see why he's attracting interest from the likes of ourselves and Sheffield United. And I know there was previous interest from Southampton, so I don't know if that's when Russell Martin was there too. It's probably one I've been keeping an eye on. So it's something we've been crying out for. Not just that, when Cherny left, we lost a lot of numbers there. I think, I don't know off the top of my head the contributions. I could probably look at my phone. It'd take me a while to get to, but again, we lost a lot there. I think somebody said if we were to lose Cherny, Dessers and Diggerman, that's 57 goals right away, scrubbed off. So it is certainly something that, it needs to be prioritised. And you look at Gassama, I think he had decent numbers for last year as well. So you can see that we are signing guys with a profile and there's a plan there. How many times did we look last year and it was just a mixed bag of players? There was no pace, there was creativity from the right, we were playing a striker off the left, and just everything was so disjointed. It looks like we really have our act together behind the scenes now, but like we keep saying, it's okay being excited about new signings and what might be ahead, but it's the actual doing and not so much the talking that is important at Rangers. And the proof will be in the pudding when the season comes round, and we'll see where we are come sort of Christmas, January, February time. But I'm hopeful, I'm excited, and it's good times. I just hope there's good times ahead.
Yeah, I think we all hope there's good times ahead. To be, I think I've been a moment where I've not wanted good times for Rangers.
This podcast can be a lonely place when it's not. Just quickly, can I say hi to Jamie and Steve in the comments? It keeps messaging, so maybe that'll stop them.
I assume they're unfortunate enough to be your mates or something like that, are they? Is it
a pleasure? It's their pleasure, put it that
way. Just to round off the podcast, keen to get into. That was the end of our pre-season. We've obviously got the Panathinaikos second leg coming up on Wednesday night. It'll be really interesting to see how that goes. I imagine it's going to be a pretty warm night in Athens on Wednesday. €13 a ticket apparently if you get over there. So not difficult to get one. But Motherwell on Saturday. It's Saturday at 5:30 PM to kick off the season. Fills me with dread already, but that's obviously past experiences of watching Rangers. Craig, how ready do you feel we are for the start of the league season? I actually think it's quite hard to tell.
As it's hard to tell, we're probably in a better position than I thought we would be in, with the amount of work we needed to do over the summer. I knew it wasn't going to be perfect come the first league game. So it is really hard to tell, and I think it's been a strange pre-season. I don't think if we had proper time to plan out a pre-season, if there wasn't such a big regime change, would it have went the way it went? The order of the games, I feel like you'd have built up to the Club Brugge games, and it might have been a different order the way we played the games in, if you get what I'm trying to say. But I think that's the issue as well with early qualifiers. So you go and win the league and you'll take that issue out. So I think it's been a little bit of a kind of strange pre-season. We've not really had a chance to see a lot, which has made it difficult to really predict. But I think the Panathinaikos home games gives a lot of positives to think about. 2-0 lead in that one makes you quite quietly confident that we'll have enough to get through that. And then there's a bit of positivity building. So Motherwell as well, that's always a tricky game, but they're not in a too dissimilar position. They had to change their manager, pretty late on in the summer. So they'll be in a kind of summer. It's not as if you're playing a team that's established and ready. And, like last season, we went up against Hearts the first game of the season. So I'm quite optimistic we'll start the season well. I think the fixtures have been, again, I hope it doesn't come back to bite me, but I think the fixtures have been reasonably kind to us. So I'm hopeful we'll start off quite positively.
Kyran, same question to you around how ready do you feel we are for the start of the season? But I guess also adding on, do you feel like we just have to find a way to win those first few games and make sure we don't drop points? And actually, I know we spent the first half of last season waiting for October and November to come, because that's when Fleet Clement said we'd actually start to play properly as a team, and it never quite arrived. But do you just feel like we have to just grind out the first few games and few results that just to give us time to get the squad in a place where we want it to be?
100%, and I think Russell Martin put it best in his introductory press conference when he was unveiled, was that we need to find a way to win while we develop, and that's that's pretty much it. When you play such an intricate style of playing as a manager, trying to implement that and get guys up to speed with what he actually wants and what he wants to see, you just hope that doesn't come at the cost of points and sloppy sort of draws and defeats. So do I think we're ready? I think we're good enough to go and compete and beat the teams that we're expected to beat. Do I think we could be better? Yeah, we touched on it earlier in the show. That forward line needs to improve, but that looks like it's been addressed, so I'm not worried about it whatsoever. But in terms of Motherwell, we should have enough to beat them. In terms of, I don't think Lennon Miller's been playing for them. Am I right in saying that? It looks like he's on his way.
To be honest, no, I can't tell you.
Yeah, if that's the case, then they'd be their best player down right away. But again, listen, you want to go and win leagues, you want to go and have a successful season, then you've got to go to Motherwell away on a Saturday night. That's got all the makings of like a flooded pitch in summer in Scotland and a horrible night and the most horrible game of football you've ever seen. But what's going to be interesting is how this style of play stacks up against teams domestically who camp in against us, because we've not played them that's camped in against us yet. So that's going to be an interesting subplot to things, but I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to the good stuff, the serious stuff. But I've not had much good stuff in a while, so the real stuff being back, put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. I guess you probably got a slight glimpse of it when Panathinaikos were down to 10 men last week, because they did just camp in and try and hit us on the counter if they could. I was
happy with what I seen then, to be honest.
Yeah, Craig, were you happy with what you saw in that? I guess we're clinging to, of course, so many friendlies have been behind closed doors. We're clinging to little bits and pieces of information. But in terms of that last 25, 30 minutes, how quickly we're moving the ball, the movement of the players, the fact we got that second goal, it all seemed pretty positive in terms of a team that was sitting in and camping at the edge of their own box.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of talk around Russell Martin, people are saying it'll be possession for possession's sake, and it really proved the opposite against Panathinaikos. When they sat deep, we got a lot of joy. We got in behind them, we moved quickly. And also the subs he made at that point, we were 1-0 up. He then put on two strikers. So it showed me that, he knows how to deal with it, this sort of low block. Before, we've seen against that kind of team, we've just passed it around and hoped for them to move, and it's not happened. There we just seemed to go right for the jugular, which was good to see. So, no, it was promising. And you're right, it's probably a sign of things to come, because so many teams will play that way against us.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I keep going to round off the podcast and then someone else makes a really good point. So, Kyran, Rangers on tour saying, against Motherwell and other domestic sides, do we have the ability to deal with physicality? It's great to play nice football, but we need this side to show some. I guess we've not really seen the physicality side of it. The striker, I forget his name for Panathinaikos, but he was putting himself around a bit, and it turned into a bit of a physical battle. But we've not really seen much of that blood and thunder kind of football that we sometimes see in Scotland, particularly with strikers that other domestic teams have. Is that something that you have concerns over, or is it something that you're just waiting to see how we handle it, or is it something that you think actually we'll be fine with?
It's a case of wait and see. I liked the physical battle between the striker and Giga the other night. It looked like that was his kind of game, and he welcomed it. And from all mostly the Red Star highlights that you watched of him before he came on loan here, that it looked like an adult playing with kids. It's pushing people about, and he, by all accounts, to me, he looks like one that will enjoy a physical battle. As for the rest of the team, we've not really signed any players that are that way inclined. Like Joe Rothwell, I don't think is a physical player. You're probably going to have Diamande, Rask and Asgard, a mixture of one of the three of them through the middle. Throughout that team, Tav's not a physical player. Suter enjoys a physical battle, but there's another guy who the jury's probably out on this year. Max Herring's probably not a physical player, so the only one that you can point to there, and unless Fernandez starts, Fernandez looks physical, and I think he's highly rated in terms of his aerial duels from last year, and that's a lot of the reasons why he was targeted here. So it's probably out the two new signings, Fernandez and Giga would be the ones that could sort of stand up and be counted when it came to a physical battle. But again, we'll wait and see. We don't know too much. We've only had snippets, but that looks the case.
Yeah, I was going to say, yesterday turned into that for me. Yesterday turned into quite a physical battle. Middlesbrough were, flying into tackles. And I thought when we had the subs on, latter part of the game, I thought we dealt with it very, very well. So they were probably as physical as you'll get in Scotland. They did have that, along with a lot more athleticism. So I thought yesterday, in that sense, was a good marker of how we deal with the physical side. And I don't think we shied away from any battles there.
I think that's very fair. There were a few a few hard-hitting tackles, shall we say, in there as well. The real concern yesterday was how badly we defended set pieces, but I'm sure that will come with time. Right, we're well over there, Mark. So I'll round off the podcast there. A really good discussion, and obviously a lot of excitement as we go into next week, and just there'll be competitive game after competitive game. Feels like ages since we've seen Rangers on a run of fixtures, and now we're going to be hit every midweek and every weekend with another game. So that's going to be really looking forward to that. Just a quick nod to anyone that's not seen it. We did get our Athletic at Ibrox in the next round of the Premier Sports Cup, so that's I guess I'm going to say a positive, but the fear that Queen's Park have given me since from last season, I think still hangs there. So we'll wait to see how that lands. But thanks very much to Kyran and Craig for joining us. Thank you very much to everyone for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please do drop a like and subscribe. Helps us massively and means you don't miss out on any of the content. We're absolutely flying towards 10,000 subscribers now, so every little helps on that front. So make sure you do. Same on audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. as well. We'll be back on Tuesday night at 7:30 for our latest look at the Rangers news. So make sure you join us then. But until next time, goodbye.